Hello, I'm Mantastic'c and Fantastic, and today I want to talk about Artemis by Andy Weir. So this was the 14th and last book I read in 2025, and in all honesty, it's one of my favorite books that I've ever had the delight of reading twice, actually. In fact, it was so good, I finished it the first time in 2 days, and then I tried to pace myself on the second read-through, and it took 3 days. It's a 309-page book, so it's not particularly long, but it just flows so organically, so quickly. And Andy Weir is an author who's written other sci-fi, perhaps most notably The Martian, which was turned into a movie. And for myself personally, I preferred Artemis over The Martian. So if you like The Martian, you watched it and or read the book, give Artemis a try because I think it's much more exciting. So as keeping trend with my previous kind of book review series, I will give a non-spoilery review on the first part, and then I think I'm just going to read maybe like the first several pages of the book to give you a bit of an idea of what it's like, and then maybe talk a little bit about the plot and the concepts perhaps later on in the video. So you'll definitely know when like potential spoilers are coming up. So first things first, Andy Weir writes science fiction, and Artemis is what I would consider gentle science fiction because it's not too far-fetched out of their concepts. Like, it's set in the 2080s, which is actually not that far away at this point in time, and the tech, in all honesty, is reasonably believable, and it might even be possible. To a certain extent, maybe we could potentially build a city on the moon, because Artemis is the first and only city built on the moon, but there's obviously like the logistical hurdles, and most probably importantly, the cost hurdles. No nation wants to fund that much money into something that may or may not be viable within our lifetime or even the next lifetime, because things are kind of short-sighted in that regards. But maybe in like 50 years, things will be a bit more efficient. We might be able to manufacture. But point of the matter is, it seems quite believable. Like, sometimes I don't really realize I'm necessarily reading science fiction, aside from like when they mention like, oh, like lower gravity, we have to go on like moonwalks outside, put on like the pressure suits, airlocks, stuff like that. It's not too far-fetched and too out there, in all honesty. And because it is a city on the moon, it is an alternative society. And I honestly feel like lots of science fiction does well when you create these alternative but believable societies. Because, like I said, it's a city on the moon. There are people on the moon. They have jobs, they have lives, like they have bars, they have entertainment, they have manufacturing. Like, it seems like a very believable place. And tourism is definitely one of the larger industries on there. They don't necessarily manufacture very much at this point because it's still a relatively small city. So it is all quite believable. So with that in mind, it's not, like I said, heavy or hard science fiction. It's not like, say, Hyperion or the Three-Body Problem, which are probably some of my favorite series, which are much heavier by comparison. So easier, more streamlined read because of that. And in addition to that, the protagonist is one of the more lovable protagonists, I feel. Like, Jasmine, or Jazz, has lots of spunk, or she has charisma. Like, she is an enjoyable person. She is intelligent. She is reasonably witty. She has a personality. She knows who she is. She doesn't necessarily bend her morals that much. And overall, it makes it so that you are kind of like cheering her on. Like, the plot is also not advanced by dumb decisions, which is definitely something that many books get wrong, because it just unfolds organically. Things are happening. Jasmine doesn't necessarily make like dumb decisions. Maybe some decisions that are fueled by, like, say, greed and money, which is kind of normal when you think about it, but she does still have a moral compass. And again, as the plot does advance and unfold, it does make sense. It wasn't because like they made a terribly silly decision that everyone could see was coming, was a bad choice. No, it's like she feels reasonably human overall. And I like that in the book when, the plot does move forward because of things happening, not because characters make a bad decision. So, in addition to that, it is quite action-packed. Like I said, there's a reason why I read it in 2 or 3 days, because it just reads quickly. Like, things are happening. You read a chapter and you're like, wow, another cliffhanger. I just need to find out what happens. You keep reading the next chapter and you're like, lo and behold, it's a couple hours later and a couple hundred pages later. Wonderful time overall. So, like I already mentioned, easy to read, as I've already mentioned there. And I don't think I really had to look up any of the words. It's a more recent book. It was published not too many years ago, so it doesn't have any like archaic or old style English. Like, it seemed reasonably straightforward in those regards. The plot, like I said, makes sense. You know what is happening. You kind of know, quote unquote, who like the players in the game are. It's not particularly confusing. There's not too many names, not too many characters. It's all essentially from like Jasmine's point of view. And kind of that in mind, I'm going to start reading maybe the first several pages of the book to give you an idea of what it's about. Now, with that being said, there is profanity in this book. There are swear words. I don't swear. I like to say what the fish, so I'm quite polite. However, for this little brief reading, I'm going to have to actually swear a little bit. So if that is going to be a problem for you, ladies and gentlemen, this may or may not be the book for you. And then again, I guess it's kind of considered as spoilers, so you have been warned thus far. So, Chapter 1. So it's all from first person point of view from Jasmine. I bounded over the gray, dusty terrain towards the huge dome of Conrad Bubble. Its airlocked ring of red lights stood distressingly far away. It's hard to run of 100 kilograms of gear on, even in lunar gravity, but you'd be amazed at how fast you can hustle when your life is on the line. Bob ran beside me. His voice came over the radio. "Let me connect my tanks to your suit." "That'll just get you killed too." "The leak's huge," he huffed. "I can see the gas escaping your tanks." "Thanks for the pep talk." "I'm the EVA master here," Bob said. "Stop right now and let me cross-connect." "Negative." I kept running. There was a pop right before the leak alarm. "Metal fatigue. Got to be the valve assembly. If you cross-connect, you'll puncture your line on a jagged edge." "I'm willing to take that risk." "I'm not willing to let you," I said. "Trust me on this, Bob. I know metal." I switched to long, even hops. It felt like slow motion, but it was the best way to move with all that weight. My helmet's heads-up display said the airlock was 52 meters away as I glanced at my arm readouts. My oxygen reserve plummeted while I watched. So I stopped watching. The long strides paid off. I was really hauling ass now. I even left Bob behind, and he's the most skilled EVA master on the moon. That's the trick. Add more forward momentum to every time you touch the ground, but that also means each hop is a tricky affair. If you screw up, you'll faceplant and slide along the ground. EVA suits are tough, but it's best to not grind them against regolith. "You're going too fast. If you trip, you could crack your faceplate." "Better than sucking vacuum," I said. "I've got maybe 10 seconds. "I'm way behind you," he said. "Don't wait for me." I only realized how fast I was going when the triangular plates of Conrad filled my view. They were growing very quickly. Shit! No time to slow down. I made one final leap and added a forward roll. I timed it just right, more out of luck than skill, and hit the wall with my feet. Okay, Bob was right. I'd been going way too fast. I hit the ground, scrambled to my feet, and clawed at the hatch crank. My ears popped. Alarms blared in my helmet. The tank was on its last legs. It couldn't counteract the leak anymore. I pushed the hatch open and fell inside. I gasped for breath, and my vision blurred. I kicked the hatch closed, reached up to the emergency tank, and yanked out the pin. The top of the tank flew off and air flooded into the compartment. It came out so fast, half of it liquefied into fog particles from the cooling that comes with rapid expansion. I fell to the ground, barely conscious. I panted in my suit and suppressed the urge to puke. That was way the hell more exertion than I'm built for. An oxygen-deprived headache took root. It'd be with me for a few hours, at least. I managed to get altitude sickness on the moon. The hiss died to a trickle, then finished. Bob finally made it to the hatch. I saw him peek in through the small, round window. "Status?" he radioed. "Conscious," I wheezed. "Can you stand, or should I call for an assist?" Bob couldn't come in without killing me. I was lying in the airlock of a bad suit. But any of the 2,000 people inside the city could open the airlock from the other side and drag me in. No need. I got to my hands and knees, then to my feet. I steadied myself against the control panel and initiated the cleanse. High-pressured air jets blasted me from all angles. Gray lunar dust swirled in the airlock and got pulled into filtered vents along the wall. After the cleanse, the inner hatch door opened automatically. I stepped into the antechamber, resealed the inner hatch, and plopped down on a bench. Bob cycled through the airlock the normal way. No dramatic emergency tank, which now had to be replaced, by the way. Just the normal pumps and valves method. After his cleanse cycle, he joined me in the antechamber. I wordlessly helped Bob out of his helmet and gloves. You should never make someone de-suit themselves. Sure, it's doable, but it's a pain in the ass. There's a tradition to these things. He returned the favor. "Well, that sucked," I said as he lifted my helmet off. "You almost died." He stepped out of the suit. "You should have listened to my instructions." I wriggled out of my suit and looked at the back. I pointed to the jagged piece of metal that was once a valve. Blown valve, just like I said. metal fatigue. He peered at the valve and nodded. Okay, you're right to refuse cross-connection. Well done. But this still shouldn't have happened. Where the hell did you get this suit? I bought it used. Why would you buy a used suit? Because I couldn't afford a new one. I had enough money for a used one, and you assholes won't let me join the guild until I own a suit. You should have saved up for a new one. Bob Lewis is a former U.S. Marine with a no-bullshit attitude. More important, he's the EVA Guild's head trainer. He answers to the guild master, but Bob and Bob alone determines your suitability to become a member. And if you aren't a member, you're not allowed to do EVAs or lead groups or tourists on the surface. That's how guilds work. Dicks. So, how'd I do? He snorted. Are you kidding me? You failed the exam, Jazz. You super duper failed. Why? I demanded. I did all the required maneuvers, accomplished all the tasks, and finished the obstacle course in under 7 minutes. And when a near fatal problem occurred, I kept from endangering my partner and got safely back to town. He opened the locker and stacked his gloves and helmets inside. Your suit is your responsibility. It failed. That means you failed. How can you blame me for that leak? Everything was fine when we headed out. This is a results-oriented profession. The moon's a mean old bitch. She doesn't care why your suit fails. She just kills you when it does. You should have inspected your gear better. He hung the rest of his suit on its custom rack in the locker. Come on, Bob. Jazz, you almost died out there. How can I possibly give you a pass? He closed the locker and started to leave. You can retake the test in 6 months. I blocked his path. That's so ridiculous. Why do I have to put up my life on hold because of some arbitrary guild rule? Pay more attention to equipment inspection. He stepped around me and out of the antechamber. And pay full price when you get that leak fixed. I watched him go, then slumped onto the bench. Fuck. So yeah, not quite exactly the first chapter, but it gives you a general gist of like Jasmine's personality, her spunk, her sailor quality language in terms of profanity and swearing, but overall, like I said, it flows quite nicely. Like, things happen. Like, she was being, like, more frugal of her suit, and that's why there was a problem. Not the most outrageous thing, but again, it's a small part in this book. Like, she is a character who was considered to be quite intelligent as a youngster, had, like, great potential, but kind of squandered away due to, like, being a bad teenager, so to speak. So, like, she kind of lives her life as a porter / smuggler, because, you know, you can smuggle goods into Artemis because people will pay top dollar for certain things overall that may be challenging to get on the moon. So, like I said, the book is fast, it's fun. The plot itself, like, you will be introduced to more characters because Jasmine, as a smuggler, she does have some, I guess, rich clientele, so she will naturally be potentially mixed up in affairs from people who are wealthier, who want to essentially gain control of the city, control certain like industries, and that's kind of, I guess, the gist of what I want to say, because I don't want to really spoil it, because like I said, it's a little bit of a mystery. It's kind of interesting to see like the things unfold and kind of realize, oh, you got yourself into a truly devastatingly dangerous situation, Jasmine. How would you get yourself out of it? And I guess you can kind of notice, like, in the book, he does make like science references, but it's like he references like things in science, but it makes it believable and like you understand what's happening. You don't have to necessarily look up concepts from outside. Like, you know what a vacuum is, how it reacts with the air leaking out, and airlock, that sort of idea. So, like I said, fun and exciting book. And again, if you can give me some feedback, did you like the idea of like me reading like the first several pages to give you a bit of an idea of like the tone and flow of a book? Is that enjoyable? If not, again, feedback helps me. But with that being said, hopefully you lovely ladies and gentlemen out there have a truly fantastic day. I wish you best in your own reading adventures, and happy puzzling.